very much. You may take your seats.
Thank you, thank you.
I think before we begin, so that we know who we are talking to, we can just take a moment to introduce ourselves. I think we'll start from here. Let's give our online bio, your name, and where you work for, and why you're here.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from wherever you're watching. I know we have people who are watching online, and the times are different. My name is Fredrick Endeki from the Ministry of Health, Kenya, and Kenya Medical Training College, Machakos Campus. I'm very much delighted to be here, and thank you for attending this session. We shall discuss more. I hope it will be a very encouraging session. Don't move from your seat. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, I'm Timothy Were from the Ministry of ICT. I've had stints in the aviation, in healthcare, in education and training, still supporting ICT in those sectors. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dr. Cherus, Director of the National Treasury. We help our Kenyan citizens to manage their finances, the National Treasury, and I'm very pleased to join this audience in discussing matters cybersecurity. Thank you.
Good evening. So my name is Anaklet Koros. I am a risk evangelist. I work for AIG Kenya, and I'm excited and honored to be in this platform today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for those introductions. So we are going to start with money matters. Joel, you are going to tell us how do you define privacy?
Thank you, moderator. I think online privacy is a very controversial term. There have been different definitions of the term privacy. But I think, let me take a definition by Westin in 1967. Westin said that privacy is that claim by an individual, a group, or even an organization to determine what kind of information should be communicated to the general public. You know, privacy, when I look at it, is actually being left alone to do your own things without any disturbance by anybody. And actually, why privacy is that it appears in different forms. There's what we call solitude in privacy. And what solitude means is that you just want to be alone, you don't want to be observed by anybody. And this one has helped so many people, especially the innovators and tech people like you. I'm told that Bill Gates, every year, he has to go for 2 weeks at the middle of nowhere just to think about business ideas. That is solitude. We have also Pablo Picasso. He's a very great painter. He normally has to go somewhere and sit in a private place to think about it. Also, privacy, you can look at privacy in terms of intimacy. That relationship between a group, it can be 2 people, 3 people, that's seclusion. You know, when you are related with somebody, especially, for example, a man and a lady, there are certain actions, things that you do, you wouldn't like anybody else to know. That is what is defined in privacy as intimacy. And maybe the third one I would like to talk about is what we call anonymous in privacy. Everybody here, or most people, normally, have access to social media. In most of the cases, you'd like to express your opinions, but you don't want many people to know if that opinion came from you. So that is anonymous. And I like the technology people because they've come up with certain tools that can help you operate anonymously online. Now we're coming to online. We have a browser like the Tor, the Onion router. This browser is used by so many people who value that privacy in life. You don't want people to track you as you go through the internet. We also have certain technologies like the blockchain, which allows that anonymous action for you to do things online without being tracked. And why online privacy is very important is that most of the researchers have found that when you have that privacy, you are rarely being controlled by anybody. You are just a person of your own. You don't get controlled, and that is the importance of privacy. In a sector like mine, where we deal with public finances, we are supposed to be transparent and accountable. This might look like it's a contradiction to why we should value privacy. But let me just give you an example in that sector, is that we deal with suppliers, we deal with contractors, who when they do some tenders, we expect a transparent and open process. But as a national treasury, we cannot divulge certain detailed information about those contractors. For example, your bank account as a contractor. We are transparent, but we cannot give out your bank accounts to these other people. So that means online privacy is a very important subject that we need to talk about. Thank you, moderator. I think we'll discuss it later.
Okay. Anaklet, do you have anything to add on to that in terms of the definition? Maybe in your business, how do you define online privacy?
I think Jill has really covered it well, but just to add that, in terms of privacy, what basically is important personally to me is it gives me the power to decide what my information is being done with. Okay? Just because I give you my information doesn't mean that you can share with other parties or you can do it as you please. That's what I would define as privacy.
Mr. Were, do you want to add anything? No. Okay. Fredrick?
Thank you so much, Mr. Sam. We know when I look at data security, maybe for men who are here, has it ever occurred to you that someone asks you, your better half asks you, while you're taking a shower, that we need to talk? You get a gentle knock on the door and she tells you, I think we need to talk. And then you're like, why should we talk? I've actually had some people, and I've asked them the same thing if it has happened to them. And I've had very, very funny things happening. Others flashing their phones in the toilet. Others flashing the phones itself so that it doesn't have any memory because your privacy is being interrogated. So we're not talking about privacy here, we are talking about something that is, you don't want to go beyond a certain level. You don't want to have people to gain access to it. And when it is touched, it puts you in a very compromising situation. Thank you so much, Mr. Sam.
As we move on from matters of showers, how do we ensure productivity and continuity while leveraging comprehensive online security, Fredrick?
Well, thank you, Mr. Sam, again. Well, that's a very good and wonderful question to ask. Well, when I look at data, actually I can say that data is the current currency, in my own understanding. Data is something that doesn't depreciate in value. Everybody's after data. And the moment you have data, and the moment you can know how to, actually the more data that you have, the more advantageous you are in the current industry. So we try to look at how much data that you have, how much data can you collect from the individual, the current data that you can have. That will actually determine your next move. In the current society, you can't make the next move without data. Everything that you do currently, it depends on what data you have. The current move that you have to make, whether it is at an individual level, whether it is a company, whichever decision that you want to make, you'll have to call upon your data. What do you know? What do you have? Now, if you already have this data, and you see, for people to do business with you, they need to know, is the data that you're collecting from them safe? We are bringing in the issue of trust. If I have data with you, if I'm transacting with you, is my data safe with you? Then that means that I'll be able to do business with people. But the moment I understand, or that I come to realize that my data with you is not safe, I can't do business with you. Remember that in the current act, we say that if you have data and it leaks to the public, as an institution, there's one very embarrassing thing that you have to undergo. That is, one, you have to lose your customers because of trust. There is legal penalties you're going to incur. Throughout these sessions that we've been having, there's no session that has not mentioned money. And these monies are in very, very high figures. We've not heard of millions. You are just hearing of billions and trillions. I'm sure if I ask you to write 1 trillion, you don't know how many zeros 1 trillion has. But that is what the cyber world is losing because of data privacy. Now, we have to put a lot of effort in data privacy to make sure that the data that we have is well secured. Because the moment it leaks out, the moment that data leaks out, we lose trust in you. I can imagine after data has been leaked out, one of the things that you have to do is to tell people why their data leaked and where did it leak to. I can say it's like maybe you went in a church, you go home, but the moment you cheat in your relationship, you have to come again to church and tell people that I cheated in this relationship. That shame. So we have a situation whereby you are losing customers because of that. You are losing credibility as a business, and that actually affects your productivity. Thank you so much.
I'm seeing Joel is shaking his head very much. Do you want to add something?
No, thank you. I think it's covered what I yes, thank you.
Anaklet, sorry? Nothing to add. Mr. Were, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, as you said, data is the new gold. And locally here, I think we've been very careless, especially with personally identifiable data. Think of the books that we sign at the security guards' gates, where they ask for all the details. Think of the meat wrappers. I don't see them nowadays, but before, you'd have those bank statements wrapping meat somewhere, yeah? So I think we need to be able to protect people's data, and this is more so because now with the kind of automation and systems that we are having, it means anybody with malicious intent just needs to access some good amount of data. You remember the stories of the guards selling the security books, and these are used by crooks to defraud people in M-Pesa. These have been traced to registering people in political parties that they don't belong to. Yeah, there are people who just make calls, random calls, trying to intimidate and maybe, you know. So we are coming to a world where now we will need to take care of personal data And if you are a collector of this data, then you have added responsibility because of the laws that have been enacted. Thank you.
Well done. So, Mr. Koros, I want to ask a two-part question. So why is everybody after our data, first? And then secondly, how can we ensure that our data does not get stolen?
Thank you, Sam. And being in the midst of ICT professional, information professionals, and all of us here, it's pretty straightforward why data is important. All of us sitting here, we are data, we are information. The organizers of this event collected data to get to understand how many people are coming, where are they coming from, what did they do, who do they represent, and so on and so forth. So data is important because it gives one a competitive edge in terms of making informed decisions. And that is a positive thing, because you can use data positively to impact the way you run your business, the way you organize your operations. However, the reason why we are here today, cybersecurity, and why is everyone after our data, is because when data is in different hands, they can be used for different reasons. And for cybersecurity, these reasons are not good. They are not positive, and most often than not, that when someone has accessed or has an understanding of our vulnerabilities, of our weaknesses, they capitalize that to their own advantage, and more often than not, to our own disadvantage. So the reason why people are after our data is they want to take advantage of this information to benefit themselves. And the mode of which this is done sometimes and most of the time comes at a disadvantage to us. In terms of habits and some of the ways in which we can ensure that we protect this information, and especially online, because that's what you're talking about is, there's so many ways that has been mentioned, and in addition to the systems, the processes, the controls that have been mentioned, I'm going to emphasize on something that Hannah said in the morning session in terms of the culture of awareness. Because it's been rightly said that you might have all this system, all these processes, all this software, you've protected your house, but you are only as strong as the weakest link, okay? And more often than not, the weakest link is us as a people. So some of the habits that we can build on to ensure that we have security, we protect our information, we protect how our information is taken and used, is to have a culture of appreciation and awareness of the risks involved with our data being in the wrong hands. So, and of course, Hannah said that just because I'm aware doesn't mean that I care. So it is important, and Kibacia also said this, that it is important to make this process very easy and practicable. I'd only add that as we make the people around us, our family, our friends, as they interact online, as we make them aware of the risks that involves the information being in the wrong hands, it is important to give them the tools and make it as easy as possible. Because once we are aware of the risks that are involved in data being in the wrong hands, then we are able to appreciate, we are actually able to be socially smart. Normally you find that some of these breaches, information breaches, normally occur over holidays because people tend to be relaxed. Now, once you build into a culture of awareness and appreciation of the risks that are involved, it means that even when you are not at work, when you are not dealing with what you refer to as sensitive information, then you remain socially smart and cautious. So that whatever information, if you go somewhere and someone is telling you, like Timothy has said, that, write your number, write your details, write your phone number, you need to be aware that what is this information going to be used for? Because you've built into yourself the culture of appreciation that this data in the wrong hands can actually be. Because if someone knows your phone number and they know where you work, they can easily use that information to infiltrate what you do or the people that you work with. So it is important that wherever we go, socially especially, we realize that our lives our personal, our lives as a person, and also as a person within an organization, the line is very thin. Actually, it's blurred. So there's no line. So it is important that as we interact socially, online, we care about the information. How much information are we sharing online? Once you build that into your culture, it gives you that pause and think when you're about to share some information, when you're about to write down some information, when you're about to click on a particular thing, back of your mind you think, how can this information be used to my disadvantage? So once you build that culture, it helps you to develop socially smart, what I'd like to refer to as socially smart way of living, where you know that at every point in time, your information that you are sharing can actually be used to your disadvantage. Thank you.
How can this information be used against me? Mr. Were, I want us to talk about the Data Protection Act. This is the last thing we are going to talk about. But just tell us how the Data Protection Act has changed the way you guys work in the ministry. I want also the rest of us to be thinking about it, so we'll just do one round, 1 minute each, explaining how the Data Protection Act has affected us, starting with you, Mr. Were.
Yes, the Data Protection Act gives more responsibility to the data controllers and data processors. So if you collect any information, then it means you have added responsibility. There is the requirement for an officer who specifically looks after matters of data privacy. So I think that is one impact that we are seeing. There is the need to relook at your processes and systems, because we have been using, especially in government, forms and systems that were developed years ago when this act and the idea of data privacy was not in vogue. So there's need to redefine those forms and those data collection processes, and also the processing of information to comply. We actually host the Data Protection Commissioner, but there's also a requirement for us to comply. So there are those changes that are being effected. Support ministries like ours may not process a lot of data, maybe for our own staff, but we are advising ministries. For instance, we have the National Registration Bureau that does the IDs. This information is shared with very many public and private businesses. So there's a lot of thought, there's a lot of business engineering that will be seen in the coming days. There would even be need for provision of budget in case you are fined. So it's a whole game changer, and we are going to see better designed systems and processes, whether automated or manual, to be able to protect the data privacy of the data subjects. Thank you.
Fredrick?
Thank you. That is another good question. You see, coming from the health sector, you know, the Kenyan health sector has been divided into two. We have those in the training sector, like us in the medical training college. We have those in the medical field. Now, since the enactment of the Act, we, as Kenya Medical Training College, what we did is we have a task force that looks at the current policies that we have, whether they conform with the Data Act, and we try to put it into line so that we can align ourselves to it. And it is a task force that is very, very vibrant, And what we have done is we have also looked at capacity building. One thing that we also benefit from the ICT authority, like some few months ago, they had a training. They are sponsoring civil servants to do online training with Huawei. That was very commendable under the leadership of the former CEO, Dr. Getao. Now that was something that actually leveraged us so much because we had quite a number of our staffs being trained on cybersecurity, big data, and all that. So with the enactment of the current act, what we did was we looked at what data do we collect? How relevant is it? Is there any way where we are collecting data that is just beyond what we are dealing with, where we are doing with? And then one thing also about the health sector is we have students who go to the clinical areas. They collect data from the clinical areas. So how do we equip them so that they know of the existence of the act? We have classes that we run them through so that they become aware, so that they don't find themselves in trouble because remember, unlike in the universities whereby students are trained and then you go for attachment later on, but ours is a little bit different because they are engaged throughout in hospitals. They collect data from hospitals. They have to know about the existence of this act, and so that they also their actions are also in conformity with the act. And then we also have the syllabus. We also have a course called Health Records and Information Technology. We look at their syllabus and we have to conform with the current act so that when they are going to the field, they also don't find themselves into trouble. Remember, KMTC is quite a big institution. We have almost 72 campuses with quite a number of programs. We have students going outside the country to work within the health sector in Kenya. We actually have around 80% of the health workforce coming from KMTC. So we know the impact that we are creating in society. Thank you so much, Mr. Sam.
Thank you. John?
Thank you. When I look at since the enactment of our Data Protection Act, as a national treasury, this act has actually been able to assist us strengthen our systems, security of our systems. One is that we've been able to implement security solutions that is guarding our systems. We didn't realize that actually the importance of securing our financial systems before the enactment of the act. Number two, we find that the Ministry of ICT rolled out a program to sensitize staff on information security awareness. That one has actually helped us a lot because you could find initially that people are working on their PCs, but they are leaving them even without passwords. And the awareness that we got as a result of that Data Protection Act is actually making us more conscious about the security issues. The other one is that we've been able to come up with our information security or cyber security policies within the ministry. And actually that one was driven by the Data Security Act. So all in all, I think we are still young in terms of legislation of cyber security, but as we move along, we are seeing a positive light of ensuring that our systems are very secure and we'll be able to run our systems without much problems. Thank you.
Mr. Koros, 1 minute only.
Okay, so I have 59 seconds.
9 seconds.
I think one thing that I want to highlight about the Act is the power that it has given the data subject as an individual, how much power you have been given over your own data. So for instance, you can go to the organization that is collecting your data to understand how the data has been used and who the data has been shared with. And also there's something interesting called the right to be forgotten. So it means I can go to the organization and tell, I don't want you to have my data or information anymore. I want you to literally forget about me. Yeah. So forget about me means you no longer use it. I no longer get funny texts and so on. So that is a very fundamental right that the Act has given to the data subject, or myself as an individual.
Fundamental right. So we'll give it to the audience. If anybody has a question, can just raise up your hand, then we'll take a microphone to you as we close. There's a question.
How many questions do we have so far? All right, 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Can I get a microphone? You should know that I can't remember who it is that I pointed at.
I think you went first.
So when I come near you, know that should be ready. Where are the mics? Are you sure?
You can have this.
This one? Unless you can give me yours, sir. Thank you. Thank you, thank you. Thank you, sir. So, him there. So let's get the questions all at once. I believe that will be okay. Cindy? All right.
Okay, thank you. Henry once again, and I believe I can say I'm proudly speaking to the government of Kenya. So I have two questions. The first one is, from a personal opinion, I have a feeling that most of our government's efforts when it comes to securing data and systems often get to fail. A few cases in place. We are struggling with the Electoral Commission on whether we will go electronic or manual voting because of a systemic problem, of course. You remember the other day we had a problem with the Kenya power systems. Systems were blamed until the Minister of Internal Security had to remind us that some systems have to be given, critical security that is needed. Our efforts as a government, I think, almost end up nowhere. You remember the SIM registration also failed? Now, as the government, what assurance can we have around data and its security? What efforts is the government doing to ensure that data is secured? And the second question, recently we had the ICT bill, which ended the way each and every one of us knows. Do we see it back at some point, and in what form will it be coming back in?
All right, thank you. And please, go straight to the point. Don't give opinions to him. Question only, and because he has asked two questions, the other person is unlucky. Yes.
Hi, my name is Francis. My question is, where do we draw the line as businesses and data analysts? Where do we draw the line in terms of collecting data, because it's everywhere and there's no limited access? Also, what do we do to protect against fake news and social engineering?
All right, yeah. Because I want him to remember me well. Just give him a question, quickly.
Charles Kisaka, Crerasters. Very brief. I believe I'm speaking to the government. I see representation from all across.
Yes, you are. Your question is?
Is it possible if we could have a body that could manage and regulate ICT practitioners within the country? Right. And two, what does the Kenyan government need to do, or the Kenyan people, to have our own legislation for the ICT sector? Because something like the GDPR wasn't exactly our law. We morphicized it to fit us. Then the other part is we have the good laws, but we have a challenge in regards to implementation and accountability.
All right, thank you. Yes.
Okay, so I've had 3 questions. So, but one question cancels another question. This last question on the body of ICT practitioners, the bill that was in Parliament that the President refused to sign was actually in relation to a body to govern the ICT practitioners. So that one we'll talk about it in the first question. So I think this is to Mr. Were. Most government efforts fail to protect data. How is the government securing our data?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think from the outside, it looks like government data is not protected. But some of the most sophisticated ICT systems in Kenya are owned by the government. The government protects data. Data, you would know, like now we hold data for passports, we hold data for the ID cards, we hold data for motor vehicle registration, we are doing digitization of land titles. So we have very robust and good systems in place. In fact, the government is one of the largest spenders in ICT. Yeah. And we work with you in the private sector to be able to secure or process this data. The reason why it appears that the government does not secure its data is the human element. You'd agree that we still have rogue civil servants. Yeah. We have maybe a good percentage who may not be up to par in terms of computer literacy. We have maybe what we'd call brokers and all those, all right? So the systems themselves are secure, and we are now working on the human element. There was a lot of uproar when the Huduma number was introduced, and a bill was introduced to be able to ensure the security of that data. So government data is secured. There could have been some lapses here and there, but that is now changing following the enactment of the Cybercrimes Act, and now this Data Protection Act that we need to lead from the front. Thank you.
Okay. So I'm going to ask the rest of the guys to just state in one word answer, and then 2 words after that. Should ICT be regulated? Yes or no?
Should ICT be regulated?
Yes.
To some extent, yes, it can be.
Explanation, 2 words.
Well, you can't be given, like right now what has done, what has happened is we have the legal person and the tech person agreeing that actually what the tech person is doing with data is beyond borders. Let's draw borders. As much as you're collecting data, this is what you're supposed to be doing with that data. And that's when we are giving birth to data protection policy.
Okay. Should ICT be regulated? 1 word, yes or no? Just start with you.
I don't think I'm the right authority to say that, so I'll not comment for now.
Okay. John?
I think for me, yes. We have
Why?
so many quacks in the ICT industry that we need to make sure that professionals are the ones actually driving the ICT business. Number 2 is that all these crimes that we are seeing around, if regulations are not there, they are going to increase at sporadic speed. Thank you.
But won't regulation stifle the industry? Aren't we saying that if we regulate, we stifle the industry, and young guys who are programmers out there who have the skills will not be able to get into the industry?
Thank you. I think you can do innovations even within regulations. You know, when you leave things haywire, anybody can do anything. It is going to be more harm than regulating. But regulation doesn't mean that people are not going to be innovative in what they are doing. So I think it's good for the ministry to do regulations.
Maybe if I'm to chip in, I think the regulation is important. We need to register the practitioners. We need to know who they are, and there's need to be a mechanism even to penalize or seek recourse. At the moment, there's no way you will seek recourse when somebody fails to deliver on what they promised to do, because it's a free-for-all field. It's just that possibly it will have to be a different kind of regulation with a lot of, what can I say, a lot of entry points, so to speak. You know, like where we have the engineers board, it's very clear. You either do this diploma or you do this degree, right? But here we have a lot of self-taught people who are as good as those who have degrees. So we'll need to know how that is done. In any case, on a wider scale, the government is trying to do what they call recognition of prior learning as a way of grading people. So I think that will fall in very well with the ICT people. But regulation is important.
Fredrick, do you want to add anything?
I just wanted to comment something about someone saying that if their data is safe. Sorry, I'm taking you back. Your data is safe, sir. You can't mess up with someone who has an army. You can't mess up with someone who has all the weapons in this country. That alone, you can't mess up with the government data because you can catch up with you. So I assure you that data of the government, because even in the Ministry of Health, we hold the oldest data that is older than yourself. The supermarket only has data about yourself about 2 years, 3 years from the time you. But the data that the government has, when your mom went for the test and she was told that she's expectant, and they started monitoring the movement of the baby for 40 weeks, that was you, and then you are born up to now, they still have that data, and it is still, they are safe. So don't worry about it. I assure you your data is safe. Thank you.
Your data is safe. Your data is safe. Final question to Mr. Koros. Fake news. How do we know it is fake news or it is not fake news? Then we close.
Before I comment on that, there is a question that I was asked by Francis on where the line is in terms of the amount of data to collect. So maybe just to clarify that.
One word on that, and then one word on the other question so that we can close, because we are running out of time.
Okay, just collect the data you need. If you are running a barber shop, you do not need to collect some other information, for instance. Just collect the information on the hair, for instance. That's a question. Yeah, I'll allow the other comment.
Fake news, do you want to say anything on fake news? Okay, maybe I can say something on fake news. That is my industry. So the way to identify if something is fake news or not, first thing, it is always sensational. If something is sensational, go to mainstream media to confirm. Go to the nations of this world, go to the KBCs of this world, go to the citizens of this world to confirm. Secondly, most fake news items are not correctly spelled. You'll see some funny spelling. You'll see maybe the typing looks funny, there's a typo here and there. That one is definitely fake news. The third thing is do not believe until you verify. So if something has appeared on your timeline and it looks very interesting, don't take that as Bible truth and start sharing it, but rather go to a second source and verify. Now the verification should be with either an authority or something like that. If you've seen something that has been posted that it is DCI that said, go to the DCI page and just check. They do not delete their tweets, they don't have anything to hide. So that is how to identify fake news. And on that, thank you very much for your time. We end our session.
I love how you finish each other's sentences. Wonderful. Played also, yeah. Thank you. You remember our what? Yeah. Keep going, keep going. A better one, a better one, better one. Yeah.